and I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Because it's a direct book telling people the way it is, and people don't really want to know all.
At 91, Pat Boone finally tells the truth about Elvis Presley. Pat Boone was born Charles Eugene Boone on June 1, 1934, in Jacksonville, Florida. He stands as one of America's most enduring and versatile entertainers, a symbol of clean-cut charisma, unwavering faith, and artistic adaptability. Raised in Nashville, Tennessee, Boone was deeply rooted in Southern values and Christian teachings, which later became a cornerstone of both his personal life and professional image. He attended David Lipscomb College, Lipscomb University, then known as David Lipscomb College, and North Texas State University before graduating from Columbia University with a degree in speech and English, an education that refined his polished stage presence and articulate charm. Boone first captured national attention in the 1950s, a pivotal decade when rock and roll was emerging as a transformative musical force. He quickly rose to fame as a clean-cut alternative to the rebellious figures dominating the scene, such as Elvis Presley. Known for his smooth vocal style and wholesome image, Boone began his career by recording cover versions of rhythm and blues hits originally performed by black artists, a decision both praised for its role in bringing R&B to white audiences and criticized for cultural appropriation. Nevertheless, his renditions, such as Ain't That a Shame, originally by Fats Domino, Tutti Frutti by Little Richard, and I Almost Lost My Mind by Ivory Joe Hunter, achieved massive commercial success and introduced wider audiences to genres they may have otherwise never explored. By the late 1950s, Boone had solidified his place as one of the biggest stars in American music. He charted more than 38 top 40 hits and sold over 45 million records, with 6 #1 hits. 1 singles. His smooth ballads and romantic crooning won the hearts of millions, and his squeaky clean image made him a favorite among parents who viewed rock and roll with suspicion. Pat Boone's popularity was not fleeting. He ranked second only to Elvis Presley in terms of chart success during the decade, and even rivaled him in fan following. Boone's success wasn't confined to just radio charts. He became a fixture on television as well, hosting his own variety show, The Pat Boone Chevy Showroom, from 1957 to 1960. This weekly program showcased both established and emerging musical talent and further cemented Boone's status as a household name. Beyond his accomplishments in music and television, Pat Boone pursued a parallel career in film. He starred in more than a dozen movies, including April Love, 1957, Bernardine, 1957, Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1959, and State Fair, 1962. His acting roles largely mirrored his public persona, respectable, romantic, and morally upright, which helped sustain his appeal during a time when cultural tastes were beginning to shift. Hollywood welcomed Boone as the perfect leading man for youth-centered feel-good films. He was also known for refusing to take part in roles that clashed with his personal values, a decision that sometimes limited his opportunities, but also strengthened his brand as a wholesome icon. Pat Boone's influence extended far beyond the entertainment industry. As a devout Christian, he used his platform to advocate for faith-based values, frequently appearing at evangelical events and writing books on Christian living, family, and personal morality. He authored several bestsellers including Twixt 12 and 20, a guide for teenagers, which sold millions of copies and resonated deeply with both adolescents and their parents. He also became involved in various philanthropic and political causes, particularly those aligned with conservative and religious ideals. Boone was never afraid to voice his opinions, even when they diverged from popular sentiment, and he often used his celebrity status to influence debates on moral and cultural issues. In the 1990s, Boone surprised fans and critics alike when he released In a Metal Mood No More. Mr. Nice Guy, an album of heavy metal covers performed in his classic crooner style. Clad in black leather, Boone appeared on the American Music Awards and sparked a wave of media attention. While the album was tongue-in-cheek and intended as an affectionate tribute to rock and metal classics, it demonstrated Boone's capacity for reinvention and his willingness to take risks, even late in his career. Despite mixed reactions, the album became a cult hit and introduced him to a younger generation of fans. Over the course of his multi-decade career, Pat Boone amassed a remarkable list of achievements. More than 50 million records sold, over 2,300 recorded songs, multiple gold albums, and a reputation as one of the most influential crossover artists in American pop music. But beyond the numbers lies a legacy built on integrity, consistency, and faith. Boone's refusal to compromise his values in pursuit of fame became a defining characteristic of his persona. Unlike many stars of his era whose careers were marred by scandal or excess, Boone maintained a steady and scandal-free life, remaining married to his high school sweetheart, Shirley Foley, daughter of country music legend Red Foley, until her passing in 2019 after 65 years of marriage. Together, they had 4 daughters, including Debbie Boone, who went on to achieve musical success in her own right with the hit You Light Up My Life. Pat Boone's life and career are emblematic of a bygone era of entertainment, a time when artists were not only judged by their talent, but by the values they represented. In many ways, he remains a symbol of wholesome American culture, often remembered more for what he stood for than for any particular performance or record. Yet, it would be unfair to overlook his enormous contributions to the popularization of early rock and roll, his success across multiple mediums, and his trailblazing role as a crossover artist. As of the 2020s, Pat Boone has continued to perform, speak, and advocate for causes he believes in. Now in his 90s, he remains a spirited and articulate figure, offering reflections on music, life, and faith. His longevity in the public eye and ability to remain culturally relevant, despite changing times and shifting norms, reflects both his talent and tenacity. Now, in the twilight of an extraordinary life and career, 91-year-old Pat Boone, the iconic American singer, actor, and author, has opened up with candid reflections about his complex and often misunderstood relationship with one of the most legendary figures in music history, Elvis Presley. For decades, fans and music historians alike have speculated about the true nature of the dynamic between Boone and Presley, 2 towering figures of the 1950s who helped shape the rock and roll revolution. While both were young, charismatic, and chart-topping performers who found themselves at the epicenter of America's cultural transformation, their paths were notably different in style, image, and personal beliefs. In recent years, Boone has felt a growing desire to set the record straight. With the clarity and wisdom that comes from a life well lived, he has begun to share more personal anecdotes, unspoken feelings, and observations about Presley that he had previously kept private out of respect for his fellow entertainer and the intense public scrutiny that surrounded them both. Boone describes how, during the peak of their careers, the media often exaggerated or fabricated stories of rivalry between them, creating a narrative of competition that was far more sensationalized than factual. Boone now reveals that he had always admired Elvis for his raw talent, deep commitment to music, and the sheer magnetism he brought to the stage. He recalls early encounters with Presley at recording studios and television shows, describing him as surprisingly shy off stage but fiercely dedicated to his craft. Boone was one of the few people in the industry who recognized early on that Elvis wasn't just a trendsetter or a heartthrob. He was a revolutionary force who would leave an indelible mark on American culture. Yet Boone also acknowledges the ways in which their careers diverged. While Pat built his reputation on clean-cut, wholesome performances that aligned with his devout Christian upbringing, Elvis embraced a bolder, more rebellious image that made him an icon of youth defiance and sexual liberation. Boone reflects honestly on how this contrast impacted their public personas, noting that while he was often seen as the safe alternative to Presley, he never resented the king of rock and roll's popularity. In fact, he often felt that Elvis's success opened doors for other performers, including himself, by expanding the boundaries of what popular music could be. In telling the truth now, Boone also shares his deeper sorrow over the tragic arc of Elvis's life. He admits that he was heartbroken by Presley's slow decline into addiction and isolation, especially knowing how much pressure came with being a larger-than-life figure. Boone recalls wishing that he could have helped Elvis more, that perhaps if there had been more honest conversations, more grounding friendships, or more spiritual guidance, the outcome could have been different. Boone, a lifelong advocate of faith-based living, expresses his belief that Elvis was searching for something deeper, a connection to God, to purpose, to peace, but was too often surrounded by people who fed his fame instead of nourishing his soul. Boone now admits that although he initially underestimated Elvis's staying power, he quickly came to respect the depth of his musical genius and emotional expressiveness. Elvis had something raw, something you couldn't teach, Boone reveals. He tapped into something primal that spoke directly to people's hearts and souls. He wasn't just a performer. He was a phenomenon. In his reflections, Boone describes moments of genuine friendship, casual conversations about faith, fame, and the pressures of sudden stardom, shared performances on early television shows, and even late-night phone calls in which both men confided their fears and dreams. Pat Boone also acknowledges the ways in which their careers diverged, not just musically but spiritually. A devout Christian throughout his life, Boone remained rooted in traditional values and often used his platform to promote moral themes, while Elvis wrestled more publicly with inner demons, fame, and personal turmoil. Still, Boone refuses to cast judgment. Instead, he offers empathy and insight into the toll that stardom exacted on Elvis, calling him a sensitive soul, crushed by the weight of being larger than life. Boone's late-life reflections are filled with a mix of admiration, sorrow, and gratitude. He speaks of Elvis not just as a cultural icon, but as a vulnerable man, brilliant, tormented, generous, and misunderstood. "It took me a long time to see past the glitter and noise," Boone confesses. "But when I did, I saw someone who longed for peace, for love, for a place to rest. I wish we had talked more in the end. I wish I could have helped him." Now, as Boone looks back on a friendship that was more subtle and respectful than sensational, he finds peace in remembering the moments of kindness, admiration, and quiet understanding they shared. "Elvis was a good man," Boone has said in recent interviews, his voice heavy with emotion. "He had a beautiful heart. He struggled like we all do. Only his struggles were played out in front of the world. I wish more people had seen the real Elvis, not just the performer, but the person." For Pat Boone, speaking the truth about Elvis at this stage of life is not just about settling old myths. It's about honoring a fellow artist who, despite personal demons and public pressures, changed the world with his music. And in doing so, Boone also reaffirms his own legacy, not just as a performer who once rivaled Presley on the charts, but as a man of compassion, faith, and enduring honesty. Pat Boone's remarkable music career spans decades and stands out as one of the most prolific in the history of popular music. Over the course of his extraordinary journey as a recording artist, it is estimated that he has officially recorded more than 2,600 tracks. This staggering number not only highlights his incredible work ethic and dedication to his craft, but also underscores his versatility and prolific output. To put this achievement into perspective, very few artists, regardless of genre or era, have managed to amass such a vast catalog of recorded songs. Boone's extensive discography reflects an artist who consistently delivered new music to his audience, often covering a wide range of styles from pop and country to gospel and standards, thus securing a lasting legacy in the music industry. The sheer volume of his recordings also suggests countless hours spent in studios, collaborations with talented producers and musicians, and a constant drive to evolve and appeal to a broad audience. Throughout his career, Pat Boone achieved significant commercial success, with 38 of his singles breaking into the coveted U.S. Top 40 charts. This impressive tally of charting hits solidifies his place as a major figure in American pop music, especially during the 1950s and 1960s, when he was at the height of his popularity. Among these 38 hits, he reached the #1 position on 6 occasions, a clear testament to his widespread appeal and the resonance of his music with the listening public. Securing the top spot on the charts not only symbolizes commercial triumph, but also cultural impact, as these hits became defining songs of their era, played extensively on radio stations and influencing other artists. Boone's ability to consistently place singles in the top 40 reflects both his musical talent and the savvy promotion and management behind his career. One of the most remarkable and enduring records held by Pat Boone was his unprecedented run of consecutive weeks in the U.S. charts. Until the 2000s, he held the record for the most consecutive weeks with at least one single appearing in the U.S. Top 100 charts, a total of 220 weeks. This incredible feat illustrates a sustained period of popularity and relevance rarely matched by other artists. Staying continuously on the charts for over 4 years straight required not only the production of hit after hit, but also the ability to connect with audiences across changing musical tastes and trends. This record highlights Boone's remarkable consistency and his unique position as a steady presence in the American music scene. Holding this record for such an extended time further cements his legacy as an artist who dominated the airwaves and remained beloved by listeners for an extended era.